Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another wet weekend at in Staffordshire. Well, it's the week, but it seems like we're forever in rain and floods at the moment. Well done for everyone making it in this morning. Before I start the meeting, I just have to read out the following paragraph. And that is that I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeated viewing for 12 months. If you are seated in the room, you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and any contributions to this meeting will be recorded and broadcast. Thank you. And we'll start the meeting with item number 1, please. Have we any apologies?
Yes, Chair, thank you. We've had apologies from Councillors Paul Snape, Arshad Afsar and Richard Cox. Thank you.
And just to confirm, we are correct.
We are, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll move now on to item number 2, declarations of interest. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Declare a declaration of interest on the first item as a Cabinet Support Member.
Thank you. And I understand that's a prejudicial item, so you will be able to speak and then have to leave the room. Thank you. That's all right that's correct, isn't it, legal? Yeah. Okay. And minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of June 2023, please.
Move them, Chairman.
Would you like to move them, to second them? Seconded by John Francis. All in favour? Thank you. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll just sign them, then it's done. Excuse me, David. Thank you. And we'll move on to an important one here. And the appointment of a new member to the Countryside's Rights of Way panel. Who wants to take this?
Good morning, Chairman. I think the report is quite self-explanatory, effectively replacing Councillor Hudson with Councillor Trowbridge on the Crow panel.
Can I thank Councillor Hudson for the work that he's put into it over the last few years. I know it's been difficult for you to attend meetings, which is why you've asked to sort of swap. And can I welcome Caroline Trowbridge onto the Crow panel? I understand you haven't had the full training yet, which is important. And as soon as you have, you will find it really interesting and quite diverse, some of the things that we cover. So thank you for putting your name forwards and showing enthusiasm.
Chairman, can I just clarify that Councillor Trowbridge has received the Crow panel training?
No, I haven't finished the training. I started it, but I haven't finished it, unfortunately. So I won't be at the meeting tomorrow.
Can I suggest you have a word with Zach afterwards, because if you've started the training, perhaps it's a fairly swift way of completing it. It is important. We're fully trained, and it's important that we've got a bank of members that can attend the meetings. Okay. Thank you so much for that, both of you. And we'll move on to the main body of the agenda.
Chairman, I think there needs to be a vote on this item.
Oh, apologies. That was me just saying it's all wonderful. Is everyone in favour of the changes to the committee?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the nudge. Item number 5, and this is application for permission. 5A is the application by the Cabinet, Staffordshire County Council, at Littleton Green Community School, Colliers Way, Huntingdon. I understand Matt's going to take this one. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman.
This report relates to a planning application submitted by the County Council's Cabinet for a standalone building to provide an alternative centre for learning to support the education of pupils with special educational needs and disabilities at Littleton Green Community School, Colliers Way, Huntingdon. The proposal is reported to this committee on the basis that Sport England have objected to the proposal, as will be explained shortly. The school is in Huntingdon Village, north of Cannock, and vehicular access to the school is achieved via Colliers Way, which connects to the Stafford Road, which is the A34. The school is located on part of the former Littleton Colliery. This aerial view of the school shows the application site, which comprises of land mainly used as a playing field within the boundary of the school and is situated to the south of the existing school buildings. And the application site's situated to the, as shown in the red line area there, to the south of the main school buildings, and an area that's shown in grey there, which is the multi-use games area, otherwise referred to as a Mooga. Part of the school's playing field area is within the green belt, the area to the west there, but the application site sits outside the green belt. Two photographs here. The top left slide shows the location of the proposed building, indicating landscape boundaries between the playing field, which is there at the moment, the landscape boundary there, and the houses to the south. And then Colliers Way is there on the left-hand side. This is the part of the Mooga area. And then this photograph is just to show you the proximity to the main school building with the Mooga, or the multi-use games area there in between, but access would be provided with a gate through that fence to the school buildings. So key aspects of the proposal are clearly the building, which would be supported with the government's high needs provision capital allocations funding, which aims to deliver new places and improve existing provision in education settings for pupils with special educational needs and disabilities, particularly those with more complex needs, and for those pupils who require alternative provision. In accordance with the aims of the funding, the proposal would increase access to mainstream school placements for children who might otherwise require specialist provision. The proposed building would comprise of accommodation to support the education of up to 10 pupils. A new play area with a rubber crumb surface would be laid and enclosed with a 2 metres high steel mesh fence. The proposed construction period is anticipated to be about 23 weeks, and construction works would take place Monday to Friday from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, potentially. So this is a slide of the proposed site plan. So it shows the building just to the south there of the Mooga area. Access here, pedestrian access leading on to Colliers Way, and the play area here. And what you will observe, this is an area of playing field which has been previously laid out for a small football pitch. And then this is a slide of the proposal showing the elevations of the building, a single-storey building. So a combination of cladding and brick facing to the walls, and a flat roof there. Well, a slightly sloping roof, which is hidden behind a coping there. One thing to note is that the colours that you see on that slide aren't necessarily the colours that will be used in the final eventuality, because there'll be a condition if it gets approval, then there'll be a condition to agree the colours of the facings of the walls. So in terms of consultation and representations, no objections were received from any of the consultees except Sport England, who object on the grounds that the proposal would lead to the loss of a playing field in an area where there is a deficiency in the provision of playing fields, and we'll come on to that later. An objection was also received from a resident raising concerns about the traffic impact on Collier's Way, particularly regarding construction traffic and associated deliveries. So in terms of the key issues, in terms of general development plan policy supporting the development of community facilities and particularly educational facilities, the report concludes that the proposal is acceptable in principle. The applicant's case in the report explains the need for the proposal in terms of improving the accommodation and facilities of the school and the need for specialist provision within a mainstream school. The observations consider policies relating to design, and it is concluded that the design of the proposed development is acceptable and would not give rise to any materially harmful impacts subject to the recommended conditions. And in view of the objection from the local resident, the report considers traffic impact and the mitigation to avoid deliveries during school drop-off and pick-up times. So the observations of the report also consider matters relating to Sport England's objection. Whilst there may be scope for the applicant to overcome the objection with the reconfiguration of the pitches within the playing field, the requirements to overcome that objection are considered not reasonable nor necessary. And in any event, the objection is outweighed by the material planning benefits of the case for the reasons discussed in as summarised on this slide. So government policy places great weight behind improvements to schools, and local policy supports proposals that enhance community facilities and lead to the provision of additional facilities that improve the well-being and cohesion of local communities. You will also note that the Department of Education has issued a Section 77 approval, which relates to the use of the playing field by this development for the change of use, on the basis that the net loss resulting from this proposal would only be 0.46% of the total playing field available within the school. There is a surplus of space elsewhere on the playing field that could easily accommodate a mini five-a-side pitch, football pitch, even though the latest playing pitch strategy that's referred to in the report for the district shows that there is no local need for a mini five-a-side pitch, and there is potential as well for additional provision at other sites and a nearby recreation ground. And then the proposal doesn't affect the seven-a-side football pitch, which is elsewhere within the playing field, which was previously used by a local football club. So there's no impact on what was a recent community use, albeit that community use is now finished. And lastly, funding it to achieve the mitigation, as suggested by Sport England, currently isn't available. So at the moment, the school wouldn't be able to provide the changes that are required to overcome this Sport England. But as we say, there's sufficient in terms of the weight of the proposal to sort of outweigh the recommendation is that there's sufficient weight to overcome the objection from Sport England. So lastly, the recommendation, as you will see, is that we are recommended to the Planning Committee that we consult the Secretary of State at the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities to advise that, having regard to the matters referred to in this report before the committee, that the County Council is minded to permit the proposed development under Regulation 3 of the Town and Country Planning General Regulations 1992 as amended, subject to planning conditions listed in the report. What I should add, as explained in the report, is that we are required, because of the objection from Sport England, under a planning direction, to carry out this consultation before we can actually determine the application fully. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the report. We'll take questions when it comes to the main body of the discussion. Has there been any input from the local member? David Williams? No. Okay. And I think, Robert, do you want to say anything? 'Cause, no?
Chair, can I just clarify
Hold on,
we need
I'm
to go
looking
through
through
the
it.
public speakers first?
Oh, right. Apologies. I didn't know whether he was a public speaker because he's got a... Right. Okay. We've got Lynn Thornycroft. Thornycroft, is it? Would you like to come forwards? You'll have 5 minutes from when you start your presentation. And if you introduce yourself as well, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Lynn Thornycroft. I'm the head teacher at Littleton Green, who's backing the proposal. Thank you for having me today. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of Staffordshire County Council, Littleton Green Community School and Staffordshire University Academies Trust. I'm here to support the application to provide a dedicated teaching accommodation for primary age children with special educational needs on the site of Littleton Green in Huntington, which is situated on the A34 between Stafford and Cannock in the district of South Staffordshire. Staffordshire County Council, Littleton Green Community School and Staffordshire University Academies Trust are committed to providing a modern, safe environment for children and young people. We have identified a need for a permanent alternative provision or an AP in the inclusion system in Staffordshire County Council, as our provision is currently temporary. The County Council's accessibility strategy aims to improve the physical environment of schools, to increase the extent to which children and young people with disabilities can take advantage of education benefits, facilities or services provided and offered by schools. The County Council aims to provide a new SEN resource unit or a resource provision and prioritises projects that increase the available placements for children and young people with additional needs and barriers to learning in good or outstanding mainstream schools such as Littleton Green. Our provision will increase the local availability of high needs places, which will help reduce the out of area placements, associated transport and residential costs. It will reduce the reliance on poor quality, inappropriate or more expensive provisions where local provisions can be provided at a cost effective. It will expand good or outstanding specialist provision so that your children and young people can be educated closer to home. It will develop an independence within their local community, will enable pupils to maintain contact with a host or a mainstream school. Our provision is in line with Staffordshire's SEN strategy of schools working together to provide specialist support where needed in a local community. The project is Littleton Green Council and Academy is a joint funded project which has been approved and supported by our Trust Board. It's also been supported by Councillor David Williams to provide one of these new specialist units on a mainstream site. Littleton Green has provided a temporary resource provision within the main school building for about the last 5 years, and this new resource space will enable this support to continue for several districts on a permanent basis. The planning application is to construct an SEN hub comprising of a general teaching classroom as outlined earlier. Up to 12 pupils between 3 and 11 with behavioural, emotional and social difficulties who may have been excluded or been at risk of permanent exclusion from their mainstream school will have access to this resource provision. Our current provision is for 8 pupils and is oversubscribed. We have a waiting list. In the Cannock district alone, there have been 7 permanent primary exclusions since September, and some of these may have been avoided if we had a larger provision. The location for the new building was chosen after the County Council's initial appraisal of off-site and existing on-site accommodation. It is determined that there were no suitable and safe facilities available that would provide value for money over a medium or a long term. The provision at Littleton Green will have minimal impact on our mainstream school, but will ensure that pupils, families, staff have access to the support from the mainstream school site and the mainstream school facilities. Littleton's playing fields are for curriculum delivery only, and we can use our extensive grounds for our enrichment activities, including things like forest schools and orienteering, which ensures we provide an hour a day of physical activity. This proposed development does not adversely impact on the delivery of that 1 hour a day physical activity. The location is easily accessible by bus and is next to the main road, which will help expand the outreach of our alternative provision. Sorry. In 2018, the Football Association deemed our school field unsuitable for external use at this current time Currently, there are other priorities which prevent any further capital investment to address these concerns and provide a community football pitch at Littleton Green. The Department for Education's approval was granted in 2023 June, and in accordance with the Section 77. After the new accommodation is approved, our external play areas will still exceed the Department for Education's recommended areas for curriculum delivery. Also included in the planning application is a provision to remark out and set a five-a-side football pitch adjacent to the main field. Once this resource provision is completed, it will release space within our main school that can revert to its original use and provide services such as mental health support, school nurses and a community CAF. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak today in support of the application.
Thank you, Lynn. Your timing was immaculate. Thank you. Right. We've spoken about David Williams, and you've backed up that he's supporting it. Robert, do you want to say anything before you leave the room? Would you like to leave the room? Thank you. And we'll make sure that an officer comes and fetches you afterwards.
I am very well versed with AP and SEND as I work in Derbyshire, but I don't work in Staffordshire. Do I need to declare an interest in there? I mean, I'm an expert on how they work, but I don't have anything to do with Staffordshire.
I would say no.
Thank you.
Did you want to speak on the item? Can I just, before we start open for discussion, I actually got it slightly confused yesterday. Could one of the officers just say exactly what we're voting on, the recommendation, because it's not completely simple, is it?
Okay. I think Matt tried to do that. It's essentially, as officers, we're recommending approval in this case, but there's a direction that requires us to refer the decision to Sport England before we do so. The direction also covers things like approvals for housing on floodplains, approvals for anything near a World Heritage site. But it also includes Sport England when playing field, the protection of playing fields. Some members will recall in the past there was a period when a lot of playing fields were being sold off for housing development, and it was brought in as a result of that, really, to stop that happening and to make sure there was provision. And so that's where it originated from. So that direction now is still there and requires, in a situation where Sport England object to the loss of playing field, that we have to refer it to the Secretary of State first before we can issue the decision.
Well, thank you for that. Right, Carolyn, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think this is a great application. Really pleased to see it. It's very needed. I'm really not worried that Sports England have objected. They do object whenever it's any sort of sports field. Had the same at Westbridge Park in Stone, and we went to Sports England, and they said they'd rather local people be using this and have more knowledge than Sports England's objections. So it went through swiftly, even though it went to the Secretary of State. So I'm absolutely convinced if we send this to the Secretary of State, they'll come back with approval. So I, for one, would absolutely recommend this application and thank the head teacher for looking at our special needs children and putting all the work in to get this through.
Thank you. I've got Mike, Johnny and Philip. So Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I too support this application. And I'm mindful because when Sport England put in an objection, normally and historically been taken very, very serious. And I thought it was well covered, and I endorse what's already been said. I'm delighted that the head has had the courage to put this proposal to us today, but not only that, come in and present it. And I refer to paragraph 36, where the head explains that the school field where the proposed building would be located is on a section of a field that is deemed unsuitable by the Football Association for any community sport. And that was done back in 2018. I'm also minded that in paragraph 48, further commentary to the original objection is a further statement, I think it's paragraph 48C, a further statement confirming that if permission is granted for the proposal, then there is sufficient surplus playing field area for a sport pitch, should it be needed. So I'm fairly comfortable in my own mind that objection has been satisfied. And as I say, I'm delighted in support of it. I think the headmistress has done a great job. We do want our local children looked after in our local area. That's good all round. It's good for the students or the children, and it's good for parents, etc. And I also just finally, the government wants to enable new schools to open, good schools to expand, and all schools to adapt and improve their facilities. This is exactly what this is. This will allow more provision and greater diversity in the state-funded school sector to meet both democratic needs and the drive for increased choice and the higher. I'm therefore supporting this application and move the opposer's recommendation if so needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I just bring John in, because he did indicate earlier he wanted to speak, and then we'll go to Johnny and Philip. John?
Yeah, I think it's great that, as Mike's just alluded to, that we've got an application in the local area for local children who've got special educational needs instead of busing them all around the county. I mean, it's getting pretty hard for these children to travel on minibuses and things in the morning anyway. And as the chair of a special school and been involved with children with special educational needs for nearly 30 years, I do appreciate what the head's doing here, and it's a great proposal, to be quite frank. Having said that, it's a trust that are putting it forward, because it's an academy. What happens to the building? Are we building it and it belongs to Staffordshire County Council? Who maintains it? And I can tell you that my school, Marshlands, has gone from 48 pupils 10 years ago to nearly 155 pupils now, because the provision is increasing year on year on year because of the demographic change, as Mike's alluded to. It's a good proposal. Sport England are always objecting to playing fields, as Mike Grundy has alluded to, because they deem that houses shouldn't be built on playing fields, which has happened in the past, and we know it's happened in the past. We've been contrite in allowing things like that to happen, but the government have put a block on that. So we've got to go down this route. But my worry is, who owns the building, who's maintaining the building, and 10 to 12 pupils, do you think that's enough? Because I don't. I think they want to expand this building in the future, because 10 to 12 is neither here nor there, and I've got 155 pupils on my roll. So, you know, there's just those things that are brought in. So if Mike can explain what I've asked for, please.
Thank you, John. Mike, I think some of these are non-planning issues, but would you like to just respond?
Yeah, I say some things are going beyond the current application and what might happen in the future and what have you. So they're not, we've got to consider what's on the table, so to speak. The County Council is funding the development, hence it's a Regulation 3 matter. It's not directly funded by the Academy Trust, as I understand it. So, and I would also add that, I mean, I dealt with a similar application in Lichfield, so this isn't unique to this school. There are others going on. The County Council's got its strategy to provide this sort of provision, you know, at school base. I dealt with one, a Rockland school in Lichfield recently. So again, they're fairly small, but a number of these around the county. So not just this one. Okay.
Could we go back to the running order, which is Johnny and then Philip?
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this. But I didn't read in the papers, nor here in the report, the proximity to this venture to the local GP surgery. And I think that needs to be looked into. I think the issue of traffic flows, particularly vis-a-vis the surgery, is important. And there's one particular aspect of this, and it may well have changed. So, but I think you do need to investigate it. When I was CCG chair, we started a thing called GP First, and what that was a provision where a doctor would be on a rota. There would be a designated car with a driver, and the doctor would see all the visits for the whole of Cannock Chase in an afternoon. I'm led to believe since I retired that's now used in the mornings as well. It's a whole day venture. And sometimes they need to get to a house in quite short order. And they were, and I've seen them since I retired, in the car park of that surgery. That's where they were based. So if there was no calls coming in, you sat with the driver in the car, waiting for the call to come in at that surgery. And we just need to be sure that they can get out in short order, particularly during the construction phase. Am I clear? If they're still there, they may be located somewhere else. But the whole business of traffic flows to and from the surgery, and the issue of whether GP First is still placed there when they don't have calls, waiting for calls to come in, it needs to be looked into.
On that, I think the school head actually could answer that question, knowing some local knowledge of the area. So what you're saying is that there's the GP surgery nearby and that they could disrupt the service. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
during
I think
construction? Because obviously there's nothing
going,
directly related to the school
going
itself.
To and from the surgery it might be temporarily difficult. But what's really important is whether GP First, this completely separate organisation that got permission from the surgery to locate themselves in the car park whilst they're waiting for calls. And if that's still the case, there just needs to be a proper provision, similar as there would be to provision for ambulances to get in and out. There needs to be proper provision for that car to shift in short order. Now, I'm seeing, as it happens, the guy who used to run GP First on Monday of next week. And I can easily ask him the question and get him to get in touch with you, if that's helpful.
Thank you. It sounds to me like the sort of issue that just needs clarifying through the construction phase.
Yeah.
Could you take that on board and ask the questions, and if Johnny would just, after his meeting, refer back to the officers and tell them what's happening.
I mean, Matt's reminded me one of the conditions is a construction environmental management plan. So that deals with things like construction traffic and things like that. But we could make sure part of that provision, if members wish, could include any provision that's already there, and whether there's any so that to avoid any disruption to that, as you mentioned. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. And finally, I've got Philip Hudson's indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For 10 years now, I've worked in alternative provision and nurture groups in Derbyshire and Staffordshire, but I now work in Derbyshire. I've had quite a lot of experience of this, and it's brilliant that this proposal is coming forward, because permanent exclusions are expensive for schools, and also they're not in the best interests of our students. So that's where the alternative provision comes in. And if we don't have alternative provisions, then they go to PRUs, which is again is another expensive area of education which we don't really want to. So for value for money, really, an alternative alternative provision unit is in the best interest of the local economy and for the local people and for Staffordshire. There is a need in Staffordshire to have a few more of these alternative provision SEND schools within our county. So I'm very much for it. When we look at the things that have been said against having it, it's outside the green belt, so that has no issues. The FA have already said that that land is unsuitable to be used in football because of the soil that's there. And there's also a proven surplus of provision, and the site is no longer needed, so I think that that sort of negates that. So thank you for coming along and explaining, Lynn, about your school. I do know how they work. They are very good, and it's nice to actually see a primary age AP. I work in secondary, so to me, if we can deal with issues at a younger age, it then makes the future a lot easier for everybody concerned. And I also know how much it costs to have taxis taking students all over the counties. You know, the bill for my school must be horrendous. So to have a local AP attached to local education is a very plus, and I certainly will vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've had an indication from David.
Yeah, Chairman. Page 30 details the recommendation that we're minded to permit the application, and it's referred then to the Minister for final approval. So I move the recommendation, Chairman.
And I think in favour? Okay, I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, and if you could sort of have a word with the training of councillors to keeping to the time, it'd be great. Okay, and we'll move now on to application 5B by Land Recovery Limited. Oh, and would one of the officers please fetch Councillor Pritchard back in? Once we've got Councillor Pritchard back, we'll proceed to this application. He does need to be here, or else he can't vote on it. Okay. So this is application 5B by Land Recovery Limited at Biddulph, Staffordshire. And I think David's taking this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. I'll first provide a background to the mineral review, the location and the operation of the quarry. Mineral planning permissions can be lengthy, and the operations and surroundings and expectations about the environment and the amenity can change. The 1995 Environment Act introduced reviews of mineral permissions and provides an opportunity every 15 years to update the planning conditions to ensure mineral sites operate to more modern and higher environmental standards. A mineral review is different from the usual applications considered by Planning Committee. The role of the Planning Authority is to consult on the information submitted, which includes a list of conditions. The Mineral Planning Authority can determine conditions that are different from those proposed. An assessment is carried out whether there is a need to amend or to add to the conditions. Any changes to the new conditions need to be assessed to ensure that they would not restrict mineral extraction, impact the economic value or the asset value of the quarry. Members should also be aware that if any restrictions are imposed, the applicant would be entitled to claim compensation. As planning permission is already in place, the consideration for members is whether the proposed conditions with updates are acceptable. In terms of the actual review at Hurst Quarry, this has been submitted as the extant permission was granted in 1999. The review was due in 2014. Delays have taken place with the submission and the determination of the review, and these are detailed in the background, the relevant planning history sections, and also in Appendix 3 of the report. We're not aware that any mineral extraction has taken place since 2016 at the site. An environmental statement with associated technical appendices or reports and a list of conditions have been submitted with this review. Moving on to the location. The site is in the Staffordshire Moorlands near Biddulph and is shown on the slides with the red star, and it's also in the report. The aerial photo on this slide shows the boundary of the quarry. The quarry is adjacent to Biddulph Grange, which is a National Trust property, and is accessed from Hurst Road. The nearest residential properties are on this road. So we've got the access here, and Hurst Road is that right there. There is also industrial buildings, you can just see there on the slide, which are adjacent to the entrance. The extraction of sand and gravel would take place in the northern part of the quarry, and that's shown on the dotted black line on the plan. I'll just show you there. So you've got the area there at the top. No extraction is proposed in the rest of the quarry. That extraction has already taken place. The sand and gravel would be extracted using an excavator, then processed to produce graded products. The product would then be loaded into HGVs and exported from the quarry. The applicant estimates there is about 800,000 tonnes of material to be extracted from the site. The current annual extraction limit is 150,000 tonnes with a limit of 32-way HGV movements a day. It is not proposed to change the existing end date for the site, which is the 31st of December 2036, the number of HGV movements, the access to the quarry, or the hours of working. I've included a number of photographs which were submitted with the application. The first photograph shows the access to the site from Hurst Road and also the adjacent units. So we've got the access there in the adjacent units. The second photograph shows a view within the site, within the quarry void. These photos have been provided as part of the Lampac's landscape visual assessment, and show the view towards the quarry and also Biddulph in the distance. So we've got the quarry there and Biddulph in the distance, and the bottom shows in yellow the area where mineral extraction would take place. This slide shows the revised restoration plan that's been submitted with the application. The northern area, where there would be grassland, woodland planting, water bodies, marginal planting and rock faces would remain. A track would be retained within the access to provide access to the site, and other infrastructure required for the quarry would be removed. No changes to the southern part of the quarry are proposed. Mineral extraction and natural regeneration of this area has taken place. I'll move on to the consultation and representations. The comments received from technical consultees are summarised in paragraphs 31 to 47 of the report, and also include amendments to the proposed conditions or additional conditions. 4 letters have been received, including one from the Paulfold residents group, and this is the reason why the application is being considered by a planning committee rather than under delegated powers. These representations are summarised in paragraphs 49 of the report and addressed in the observation sections of the report. Paragraphs 52 to 99 of the report covers the key considerations. I'll now briefly go through them for you. The review must be determined in accordance with the development plan and other material planning considerations, and there have been substantial changes in these since the 99 permission was granted. The review has been considered with regard to the Staffordshire Minerals Local Plan, National Planning Policy Framework, National Planning Practice Guidance, and the Staffordshire Moorlands Local Plan, the consultation responses, and also the representations received. The review of the scheme of conditions or the conditions would not result in any different activities taking place than already permitted. Paragraph 62 to 87 of the report details the site-specific considerations included in the report, which relate to the impacts on Greenbelt, the concerns raised by residents in relation to the loss of habitat, and also wildlife and highway safety. In considering the review of the existing operation, it is considered that the review of existing operations would not have a significant effect on the openness of the green belt. In relation to the other site-specific considerations, including the report, the review provides an opportunity to update the conditions to raise environmental standards at the site. Paragraphs 88 to 98 details the need to update the conditions, and paragraph 95 provides details of the new conditions, for example, to require the submission of progress plans and also to review the restoration strategy. The table included in Appendix 1, pages 67 to 114, details the proposed conditions, the changes to the conditions, additional conditions, and an assessment of the conditions. It is considered that the conditions in this appendix would not affect the working rights, the economic viability, or the asset value of the quarry. It is also considered that the conditions are clear, precise, reasonable, necessary, and reflect current policies and practices. Appendix 2 in the report provides the conditions and informatives in full. The Council has discussed the proposed conditions with the agent acting for the applicant, and they have confirmed the conditions are acceptable. The recommendation is to approve the conditions and the informatives in Appendix 2. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, David. Could you keep that slide up so as we know what we're voting on when we come to that point? Is there any input from... Oh, we'll go to Mark Smedley first, who's the supporter who's speaking on this.
It's on Teams.
Yeah. Who's on Teams in front of us. Can you hear us okay, Mark?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. Okay then, because we have had problems in the past, so that's great. Would you like to start your presentation? You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So we registered to speak initially if we needed to respond to any objectors speaking today. Obviously, there's no objectors speaking today, so I'll keep this short and sweet. Essentially, we have worked with the council to update the conditions. We've added quite a lot of additional ones, and obviously there's a huge amount of supporting information to go with the application. So realistically, I think it's just a great opportunity to get this material out of the ground with all the economic benefits that brings, and also a fantastic opportunity for a new restoration scheme that goes above and beyond the previous one. I'd also just reiterate, as David Bray explained, it's not a standard planning application. It is a review of existing conditions for an already permitted site. And I think that's all I have to say on it, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Short and sweet. Could you just inform us, local members, not on local members speaking, have they made any comments?
No, they haven't.
Thank you. That being the case, we'll open it up to the committee. You all know that this is not a planning application per se. It's to approve a new set of conditions. Okay. Yep, carry on.
Something. Sorry. On page 36, the map there shows that access will be removed from the north end. But then when you go onto the highways conditions, let me move down to 32, is the highway conditions D. It says there that any condition related to vehicle movement hasn't changed. So how is that possible when one of the access is being changed?
Thank you, Carolyn. Matt, would you like to answer that one? David. Sorry, David.
there's one existing access, so there's no proposed changes to that access. So the highways engineer, I think, has basically did a response saying that because the existing access is there, there's no anticipation of any additional impacts from the development.
Would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, if you look at the picture on page 34, so that's the summary of proposal. Was it that one? No, it's the other picture. Let me find it. It's so small. It takes me a minute. It's page 36. At the very top, the north end, it says access would be removed. Can you see it?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, that isn't the access for the quarry. But I think that's for an access for the... It's a field at the moment, so that's the access for the field. The quarry access is on the bottom of, to the north, in the southern part of the site, off Hurst Road.
So is that a new addition to the quarry? That
That's nothing to do with the quarry. It's a field at the moment. So I would have... For the confusion, I wasn't looking at the right plan. Sorry about that.
Carolyn, could you use your microphone? Are you happy with that?
Yes, it just wasn't made clear that wasn't. It just says access.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have we any other questions, comments from members? Mike Sutherland.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 16, and thank you, David, for your presentation there earlier. You estimate 800,000 tonnes, annual extraction 150, and yet you say it could be, and it also says in the paragraph, could be worked out in less than 6 years, and yet we're not proposing to alter the current end date of 2036. My mind is that the site opened or started in 1948. I mean, effectively not quite, but almost a decade. Why would we not want to shorten that 2036 when, if I read that paragraph, it could be 2030 as a potential date?
Yeah, I mean, the point is this is an existing permission with an existing end date. If we start changing the end date, we're potentially reducing the rights to work the site in the time they've got. Potentially they could finish it, but lots of quarries can finish earlier than anticipated, and they may sell the sufficient mineral in the time. They may not. You know, that's their current permission allows them to work to that. If we start changing that, then we run the risk of we're restricting working rights and things like that as well. So if they could have offered that, we will work it quicker, whatever. But as you understand with the site, it's sort of been dormant for a few years, you know, to get going again and complete it. So that's why there is some uncertainty what could happen. But that's the current permission says 2036, and they didn't propose to change that date. If we wanted to do that, then we would run the risk of a claim against us. It's a bit like also saying you can't work it as deep, you can't go as far. If we start putting those sort of restrictions on the quarry, then we would run the risk of a claim against us for compensation. Okay.
Thank you for that explanation. It is a little bit sad that you could have a worked out site that is derelict and abandoned effectively for the remainder of, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years.
No. That's not correct. Once it's ceased, they would have to the restoration would kick in. So just because it's got an end date when it might finish doesn't mean they will. It's again the same with any quarry. If the quarry finishes sooner, then the restoration requirements kick in.
Straight away?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. That answers the question that I got in my mind. Thank you.
Could I bring David in?
Yeah, Chairman, can I refer you to page 66, the recommendation to approve the proposed scheme of conditions as modified by the County Council and set out in full in Appendix 2. I move the recommendation, Chairman.
John? Yeah, unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David, for your presentation. And we'll now move on, please, to item number 6, which is the Planning Policy and Control half-yearly report. I understand that's you, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. This is my half-year report. It contains information about policy making, development control, staff and caseload over the first half of the year. In terms of policy making, it's important to let you know that we've completed our annual monitoring report. Councils do that to monitor the performance of the local plans, in our case our minerals and waste plans. The conclusion from that, the annual monitoring report, or AMR, is that we've no immediate need to update our minerals or waste local plans, and consequently work on preparing for the review of our plans remains on hold. But it's also worth mentioning that, that there are new regulations about to come out as a result of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. LURA, which will be due next year, will set new timetables for local plans. I'm sure members are aware of the pressure for housing and the delivery through local plans, and the government are keen to make sure our local plans are up to date, and the same would also be true of minerals and waste plans. And so timetables for those reviews are likely to be established, and requirement for timetables to be established will come out from this new Act next year. The AMR also provides some contextual commentary, and I just wanted to highlight a few things from that. Firstly, the review of the NPPF. I put acronyms in here deliberately so that I could then, because you have to get used to these things. National Planning Policy Framework. That review has been ongoing for quite some time. The government have said they're going to announce the outcome of that review at the end of the year. So that's something to watch. The changes we've seen so far, again, primarily around housing and housing delivery, housing policy and what have you. But there may be things in that we need to be aware of. I mentioned LURA, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. Again, that's quite a wide-ranging act that's just been enacted, and includes things like changes to the Town and Country Planning Act, a new Section 73B, and that Section 73 relates to variations to planning permission, and some changes resulting from, I suspect, legal decisions on that around variations to planning permissions, and so some changes on that to look out for next year. As I mentioned, changes to the plan making and timetables and the prescription of what plans should contain are all in the Act as well. An important one for members to be aware of is new national development management policies that are likely to come forward in the future, and that they will be part of the consideration of planning decisions. There will be a material consideration in that. So there's something to watch for. The idea behind those is that rather than every local plan having their own little development plan policies, government are going to set national development management policies. So that's something to be aware of and to look out for in the near future. Post-Brexit and all the environmental regulations that we deal with to do with environmental assessment and all those sorts of things, changes are likely to come through that, and we're likely to have something called environmental outcome reports instead of environmental statements. So there are changes in that regard to look out for. And then other things like combined county authorities are in the Act. As I said, it is wide-ranging, and even things like street votes, which members may come across if you also work at a district. So that's, as I say, just to explain, it's wide-ranging. Other things that contextually in the AMR that have been mentioned are things like the cancellation of HS2 Phase 2A, and the implications for Staffordshire, particularly from our point of view, from a minerals point of view. It's worth mentioning that the 5 borrow pits that were identified will no longer be needed, including 2 within the area of search in our local minerals plan between Alrewas and Kings Bromley. That's all It's in that area, yes, yeah. Incidentally, it's worth adding on that note that officers are due to meet Alrewas Parish Council to discuss the implications of that announcement for that area. And as the question has been asked about the implications for Pyford Brook Quarry, which members may recall, that's also in that area of search, and that was permitted to supply HS2 Phase 1A and not Phase 2A. So that quarry is currently being established and due to start producing concrete to supply HS2 Phase 1A. And on the subject of Pyford Brook, I'd also like to update members that the temporary nighttime production of concrete up to the 31st of July 2023 was considered by the committee in June, was not actually implemented in the end, as production from the quarry hasn't started. The supply of concrete came from elsewhere. The liaison committee has been established for Pyford Brook, but also to mention that a complaint about the colour of the cement silos has been investigated and upheld. And then I'll move on to new regulations that are due to come out next year, again mentioned in the AMR, about the introduction of biodiversity net gain, a new BNG, another acronym to get used to, which will be a condition of many planning permissions with some exceptions, and they're expected to come into effect in January, so something else to be aware of going forward. All sort of major plan permissions, yes, major plan permissions with some exceptions. There'll be an expectation there's a 10% biodiversity net gain. And on that point, it's worth mentioning the County Council is shortly due to consider the adoption of a natural environment strategy. And this strategy will set out how the Council will conserve and enhance biodiversity and the wider natural environment on County Council land and through the County Council's functions, which obviously includes the decisions of this committee. So that's just a bit of policy and a bit of context of what's going on on that side of things. And then on the development control side of things, this table just outlines where we are after 2 quarters. And you can see there that on the major decisions, so that's primarily the mineral and waste decisions, 9 out of 9 on time or within an extensions of time. I'm sure members appreciate with a lot of these applications, they're fairly complex. They require. You can, but I'll. So we're performing well on that. I'll just point out the delegation at the bottom. It's at 94%. The target is 80%. But I would also say, as I've said on previous occasions, that the numbers are relatively small, so small changes either way can change that percentage. I'll move it along just to say a quick comparison, similar to last year and the year before in terms of numbers of applications and decisions that have been made. Just a reminder about the team, again, just a bit of an update. Myself as the manager, 2 team leaders, principal officers, one of them employed on a casual part-time basis. That's Graham there, you can see. Laura, we share with the wider planning, policy and enabling team, and then Catherine's our planning information officer. We've had 2 retirements in the team, one last November and one in April. And I'm retiring in March, so there will be some changes to the team, the structure, having regard to things like policy, the need for extra staff to support that as work on that side of the business takes place, but also to help maintain our performance from a development control point of view. So, notwithstanding those changes, performance is good. Chairman, that ends my presentation.
Mike, thank you very much. That's a little bit of the good, the bad and the ugly. The good bit is the fantastic results from the team in terms of performance. The bad is that we've got more regulations coming from central government, and the ugly is the fact that you're leaving. You have been brilliant. So we'll speak before that point, but it was a shock yesterday or the day before when you told us that those are your plans. But I'm sure you deserve it. Right, would John was first, and then Johnny, please, and then Caroline.
Thanks for that, Mike. I think the team are doing a great job when you look at the figures and the amount of work you're getting through. I know these small numbers, as you alluded to, they are small numbers, but at least we're up there with the performance. Where do we stand with planning policy on putting infrastructure in when we're building, like Stafford, there's one big housing estate with no infrastructure going in at all, apart from Red Hill, the A34, which has been going on for 2.5 years, and we couldn't even get the right traffic lights on Beaconside, which have been going on for 6 years. Where's our policy on putting the infrastructure in before these developments take place? And why are we not taking the developers to task to say, we want this money up front before you get any planning permission at all? So it's infrastructure that we are lacking in this town, and I'm sure it's across the county, Mike. So where are the policies and the guidelines coming from? To be quite frank, when I look at the policies, the government keep flying out of the door. I think they're making a right mess, they're contradicting themselves, and also new stuff's coming in next year which are going to tie our hands again.
Can I, apologies, add to that? 2 days ago, I think it was, I took a screenshot of Google traffic, and every single road in and out of Stafford was showing red. And I think that's quite a valid point from John, whether it's the right place to bring it up, but it's really valid because, again, I'd echo what John said and add in terms of infrastructure, broadband and also electricity as we go forwards.
This comes down to districts and boroughs as well, working alongside each other, and to be quite frank, it's an anathema because I don't.
Very lucky today, members. You've got Mark Parkinson here, who I'm sure will be able to comment on this for you.
Sorry, Mark, I never saw you sat quietly at the end there. Off you go.
Yeah, I think the short answer is the Secretary of State was in House of Parliament yesterday talking about some of these issues, and I seem to understand that revisions to the MPPF will be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks. So as an early Christmas present for you, Councillor Francis, hopefully you'll get exactly what you want, and we'll see a lot more front loading of infrastructure in the future.
Could I ask on a serious note about this? Is there a way, because I think a lot of councillors are concerned about this infrastructure before we put planning. Is it possible for us to, who do we flag it up to? Do we flag it up to the leader or the chief exec, and can it come from this committee if the committee's so minded?
I think it's worth obviously using the minutes of this session to talk to the cabinet members responsible and take it from there. I think is probably my advice.
It is getting beyond the scope of what I normally deal with, to be perfectly honest. Minerals and waste. I mean, some of the infrastructure is things like schools. Some of the school applications we're dealing with at the moment, we've got one at Burley Fields, Castlefield. And so we've got some, and they're coming from money from school development that's coming to the county council to build those schools. So it does happen. Sometimes the timing's an issue, but a lot of it is more infrastructure to support district planning permissions. You understand that, yeah.
Go back briefly, Mark. I understand all that, and this is why I questioned about the trust. Why are we building buildings for academies and trusts when they're awash with money and paying their chief execs £250,000 a year? Well, that's another issue. And the other thing that I was going to ask about, and Mark and I have talked about it, and there's lots of emails flying about it, is solar farms. We've got to get to grips with this solar farm planning applications, because there's some going up in my division, 3 of them, which are going to cover about 600 to 800 acres, 3 different planning permissions, because if you go under 50 megawatts, you don't need permission from the Secretary of State. If you go over 50 megawatts, you've got to go to the Secretary of State for determination. So there's lots of these things coming up which are going to impact on the countryside, going to impact on the production of food, and also going to impact on the quality of life for the people near them. So we've got to really get to grips with some of this.
Thank you, John. I think outside of this room, you and I need to have a word with Mark Parkinson and the relevant cabinet members as well. And it is a pertinent point that you make. Thank you. I've now got Johnny and then Caroline.
The concept of a requirement of a net biodiversity gain is something that both intrigues me and pleases me. My question really is, how is that measured? Because the natural environment is so complex. Who's going to determine what 10% means? Yeah. Because without a clear understanding of that, there's going to be arguments about it. And I sympathise to a point, John's issue about solar farms, but we absolutely have to do something about this global warming business. Mm-hmm. There's no getting away from it. It's something, if we're concerned as a committee about this, then it's something that Simon needs to look at in the context of the fact that we have to reach net zero. There's no getting away from that. We have to be imaginative as to how we do it. And solar farms will be part of that mix.
Not so much
it has
in
to
the
be.
Northern Hemisphere, John. Not so much in the Northern Hemisphere.
No, I disagree with that. It's a vital issue. And actually, anything pertaining to that is the most important issue that will ever come to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just jump in on one of the
yes, certainly.
Councillor McMahon, on one of the points, BNG and how we measure it, there's something called a metric. There's a spreadsheet. It's been, obviously, it's not come about. There's a mechanism for it. I think only ecologists understand it, but we will have to consider that. And one thing, obviously, we're watching the space. New planning guidance has just come out. There's new guidance on model conditions. There are lots of things coming out at the moment. It's been delayed a little bit, this whole thing, by the government, but it's now coming out, coming thick and fast. But it's been around for a number of years, and as they developed and what have you. It's something we're contemplating. Maybe there's a member training date booked for May. That might be a good opportunity to explain all that, and perhaps some of these other changes that are going on at the moment. So that would be a chance, and possibly our county ecologist might come along to that training session to delve a bit more deeply into that, if that members would find that useful. So, okay.
As a farmer and businessman myself, I would welcome an audit that actually works, because I think I can name about 10 different systems at the moment, and they all give you different results. So when we get some clarity, that will actually help us, because we know where we are. It's quite scary to sort of the whole carbon credits route that we seem to be going down. Mike, did you want to? Carolyn's indicated. Did you want to speak on that? Okay, Carolyn.
Mike, thank you for this report. Absolutely lovely report to read. Very worried that you're leaving, I must admit. Will you please go and support the borough team at Stafford Borough, because they couldn't even get anywhere near these figures. Absolutely excellent figures. I know not the 100% won't be 100% on time. It'll be, you've asked for extensions and of course agreed. So a little bit of play license there, but still very, very impressive figures. My question is, one of two. biodiversity net gain, I thought that was already in place now, because we've been talking about that at the borough for some time. So I didn't realise that hadn't come into place yet, and I think it can only be a good thing. But my main question is, are the staff that are taking over and the people that you've trained, have you passed all the knowledge needed on? I mean, the knowledge that isn't in books, the knowledge that's needed for the area, and the knowledge that you've obtained over the years, so that we still get impressive figures like this for the next 5-10 years?
It's a question to answer because it's my team that's performed and achieved this, so you know, it's safe in their hands as far as I'm concerned. Yes,
full team
yeah.
is a lot.
Yes, it is, you're right. But you know, we've got a good team, and we do need to reshape that team going forward. And Mark, who manages me, will be part of that process going forward to recruit and to shape the team going forward.
Well, just to let you know, I will be watching these figures for the next couple of years. Yeah.
Thank you, and I endorse the comments that have been made about the performance card. Very good. However, on the annual monitoring report under C, a few of the older mineral sites have yet to produce detailed restoration plans. Now, it goes back to the last one, where what we don't want is worked out sites and then manana take place over a number of years. That is my concern. So I don't know how, but you put it there, how big a problem, smaller problem it is, and what we actually do in there. Have we got a planned programme? I'm sure we have. Thanks.
Members may not realise there are quite a few dormant sites around the county that have permissions that are just essentially dormant, and these are old permissions. So those figures that mention detailed restoration plans include some of those dormant sites. There are other sites. There are a lot of the sites that we deal with now that are active. We've got restoration plans, and we even have now modern conditions that encourage review of those plans to try and keep them up to date when new things come along like BNG, and you know, the fashions change, you might say, with restoration. So we've even built that into the more modern conditions as well. But there are some that are, you might say, sleepers around that. So that's where that reference to old permissions comes from, or old restoration plans that need updating, and it's just waiting for, you might say, those sleepers to waken up, and that's when, or reviews to then take place, and we can introduce opportunities to update those plans.
And of course, today we've revisited one of those sleeping giants. John, do you want a final bite of the cherry?
Depends if you've got natterjack toads in the quarry. That's the next thing, isn't it? Yeah, John is quite right about the global warming and the diversity we've got to the ways to produce energy. But one of the things that should have happened, and this is governments of various colour over the last 20 plus years, what should have happened was there should have been legislation produced and policy guidance produced that every new house should have had solar panels put on the roof, and every new building, like these bloody great sheds we've got going up all around Stafford, should have had solar panels covering the roof. So we shouldn't be taking farmland.
John, could you watch your language, because we are webcast? Thank you. Was that a question or was that a statement? Statement. Thank you. If no other members actually want to say anything, we'll move on to item 7, exclusion.
You need to pass the recommendation, Chairman.
Yeah, apologies. David.
I was only going to say, Chairman, that it seems very inadequate when we look at the extent of the report and the work that's been done by the team, that all that we're being asked to do is to note the report. That seems very inadequate, and I would just like to add my comments to say that I've found the planning team to being very, very accessible, and also to come back with answers that we could understand. And I think that's quite vital in an officer team from the county. So I move the recommendation, Chairman.
All agree? Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, exclusion of the public. I believe there are no items on that. It's 11:25. We'll close the meeting. Thank you all for coming along and involving yourself in the meeting. Thank you to the officers for the reports. Sounds like we've got another meeting, Mark, at some point about infrastructure outside of this room. And thank you to Democratic Services. Okay.
Do you want to head for